So Wales come up just short out in Murrayfield, losing 35 to 29, getting the losing bonus point. And if you'd offered me this scoreline before the game, I would have 100% taken it and said, that seems like a good performance. Let's move on to the England game. But ultimately, it doesn't feel like that. And to be honest, that scoreline flatters Wales, in my opinion. Let's get into it. My name's Christian, and this is the Welsh Sports Channel. Alright, so, there's a bit of lipstick on the pig. There was a lot of character. Let's get that out of the way first. The boys dug really deep, particularly in their second half. But this was one of the worst feelings I had, particularly in that first half watching Wales. We started so badly. We were just not at the races from minute one. It seemed like there was no emotional intensity. Scotland scored pretty early and pretty easily. It was phases, and we couldn't do anything to really disrupt it. And eventually they go over in the corner, Kinghorn finishes, and it's a little bit of a half-assed tackle from Gareth Anscombe, who doesn't really commit to it, and Thomas Williams comes over and doesn't really do anything at all. So that was really disappointing. And then it just seemed to get from bad to worse. We were getting beaten all of the collision points, and when they were going through phases and we couldn't disrupt really. And once they were on the front foot, we couldn't really get our defensive line set very well, so we were struggling to get off the line and put in good shots. And eventually they were very methodical and broke us down. A couple of times, Jack Morgan, if it wasn't for Jack Morgan in that first 20 minutes, we would have been in deep trouble, because I counted 3, it might have been 4, but I counted 3 turnovers. One was a rip and 2 were penalties in or around our 22, which saved us in opportunities where Scotland were looking pretty ominous. We did come back and we got the Blair Murray try. Going through some phases, we weren't really causing them many issues, weren't getting that penetration we were getting against Ireland, weren't playing as flat to the line like we were against Ireland. Eventually it was a really excellent kick from Anscombe, well weighted, a good call, whoever called it, whether it was the outside backs or him at 10, but excellently executed. And then I thought, well, maybe, we've sort of had a bit of a poor start, but we're going to get back into it. And then nothing really happened from there. Really struggled, like I said, across the board, particularly at breakdown. We got battered. Other than Jack Morgan, we got absolutely battered. All of our ball was getting slowed down, or they were counter-rucking. The amount of times, it must have been 4 or 5 times they counter-rucked and stole the ball from us. Players in with the penalties, getting turnovers at ruck time. It was just we just lacked that intensity. There was the lack of accuracy. One that springs to mind is we hadn't had the ball. We get a shot into their 22, line out off the top perfect, and then it's a forward pass to Ben Thomas, who actually, whether it was his line was he came too early or the ball came to him too late, but he made ground off that line. That was the one with the Van der Merwe one where they checked it for hands in the face, which I think was the right decision, because that was all happened so quick. Like, he's never trying to go for someone's face there. We couldn't handle the speed of ball. Will Griff-John then, he was having all the praise in the last game from me, from everyone, and he really showed yesterday rather, why he hasn't really been in and around the squad. It was just poor. The yellow card was pathetic. Like, I don't understand what's happened there. What goes through your mind? I guess it's just under so much pressure that you're just like tired and not really thinking, and just put out a lazy boot. Yellow card ends up costing us. He then also had that knock on later, which eventually got him the shepherd's crook. The scrum wasn't as good as it was against Ireland. Just bad. The backs were just absolutely destroying us for Scotland. You have to give some credit to Scotland, because in that first half they just blew us away. There wasn't a competition. We weren't playing the same game. They were playing fast, intensity, accurate, and we were just, like I said, Jack Morgan 3 turnovers, just holding on to make it not like 40 points in the first half. Then trying to force the game, then we turn the ball over in our 22. Ben Thomas puts a speculative crossfield to Blair Murray, which is on, you have to say, but probably not the right option at the time. Doesn't execute well. Murray desperately trying to keep the ball in, flings it back in, not looking to anyone. Doesn't execute that well, compounding the error. Then compounding on top of that, Ben Thomas can't gather Blair Murray's frantic throw back in, and Tom Jordan picks up for like it's an embarrassing. I wrote it embarrassing on you because it was just shocking. And at that point, I'm one of the most partisan Welsh fans you can imagine. I almost turned it off. I went downstairs at half time, made a cup of tea, and I just thought, I don't know if I can stomach this. The disappointment for me was it was like last game against Ireland was like a false dawn, and it was the typical manager's bump where we get a good performance and then it just reverted back to type, and that was what was really disappointing. And I thought, after how good we felt after the Ireland game, I was watching that first half just thinking, this means that we are fundamentally dreadful, and this is going to take so long to undo. And I was just so resigned to where we are at the moment, and it was really tough. That was the worst I felt watching Wales performance for ages, and that says a lot considering what we've witnessed under the previous regime. We were too deep in attack. There was not enough speed coming onto the ball, supporting the carrier, and the one-on-one tackling was just not good enough. And then we made it to half-time, just about, and then Scotland came out at about 50 minutes. Then the changes started to come on. Scotland 100% took their foot off the gas, started making some mistakes or not being as clinical as they were, and we got back into the game. Good to see that the maul is still a weapon, and it's good to see that we could create stuff. So the subs made a massive impact off the bench, which they didn't last week. In fairness, I watched the press conference from Matt Sherratt and Jack Morgan this morning, and someone mentioned about the bench making an impact. And to be fairness to Sherratt, he said it did, and we're happy with it. But let's be fair, Scotland had taken their foot off the gas by that point, and that second half revival he was very happy with, but he did caveat it very honestly with the fact that they did take their foot off the gas. So that fair play to him. He didn't try and bullshit us. He was very honest about that. Started going through some phases, which was good. Once Anscombe came off and Jared Evans came on and the bench in the forwards came on, it looked a lot better. There was a lot more intensity, and Derry Lake offered that real bullocking ball carrying, coming on at some massive pace. He's taking the ball with a run up of 10 metres. That's what we need. That's what we were lacking in the first one, and it was first half, and that was very reminiscent of what has been in the previous regime. Anscombe was taking the ball, standing still, pulling it back to people who were way too deep. Getting front rowers at first receiver all the time or second receiver. It was a bit of a mess. But once we started going through the phases, Jared started introducing some pace into the attack. It really started to turn, and then the character from the players, you have to say, was excellent. They battled, they dug in, and it was very reminiscent of last year against Scotland, where they went to that massive lead in the Principality, and then in the second half we just threw caution to the wind and we started causing them issues, and that was ultimately what happened in this game. It was almost a carbon copy of the last game. What was pleasing was, once, even though we'd been beaten terribly in the first half, and that second half when we got back into the game, it was like the 72nd minute, and even though we probably weren't going to win at that point, we still needed 2 or 3 scores. The goal line defence that we had, it was around the 70th, 72nd minute, was unbelievable. I thought Scotland scored about 3 or 4 times, and it was just character and heart, and everyone was working hard, and that gives you reason to have a bit of hope that even really in what at that point was probably the players probably understood was going to be a dying effort, they didn't give up, and they could have easily just rolled over at that point and thought, oh well, we did try and come back, but we couldn't ultimately do it. but they did carry on going, which was very pleasing. And then the try not try for Faletau from that amazing play in Murray run. He has just got this knack that we've spoken about in videos before of just slipping tackles. My heart says that was harsh, the jumping over the tackler. It wasn't black and white. It wasn't they're running head on head and he's done an American football hurdle over the defender. That's not what happened. But he did jump over the tackle. So by the letter of the law, it was right. But it was all just happened so quick that it wasn't. It was just like an instinct. And he sort of more of jumped out of the tackle rather than jumped over it. But I understand why the ref didn't give it. But it's such a shame because that was a super try. All individual brains from Murray. And then Faletau with awesome support running and enough pace and gas to make it in the dying embers of the game. So unfortunately that was chalked off, but it was great to watch. And that's really the summary of the match. I was so disappointed. Like I said, there was such a good vibe after the Ireland game, and then I was cautiously optimistic going into this. I did feel like we could get something out of this, and I did feel like we could get a win, but it was all going to be, did we carry on the momentum from the Ireland game into this one? And it's kind of weird because I don't know if we have, even though that, like I said, that scoreline would have been good enough for me before the game. If you'd offered me that, I would have said, yeah, keeping the performance moving and keeping the momentum. But I don't know if that performance as a whole is a momentum killer or it's just something you can say, oh, well, we showed enough character and we can build on that. I don't really know. That's going to be Matt Sherritt's job and the players now to rouse for the England game. And if there's a game, they can't start the England game like that, because if there's one game you got to get up for, it's the Wales England game. So I mean, I guess the jury's still out. Is this the dawn of a new era, or is it just the same old, what we've seen over the last year, 18 months? We'll have to wait now to see until this England game. Go through the position groups. The front row that started wasn't as good as they were in the last game, and in fact the subs that came on made a difference. I thought Elliot Dee, though, out of the front row was the standout. His line out was superb. I'm pretty sure I had roughly 100% or near enough. It's so on point, and he's really energetic around the pitch, so that was good. And Nicky Smith put in a lot of effort, carried quite a fair bit, and tackled a fair bit, but it was a little bit ineffective at the scrum. Give away 1 or 2 penalties, which was a shame because that's his bread and butter. Will Griff-John was disappointing, as we touched on. I wonder if we'll see him in the next game now. I don't know, it's mental. Will Rowlands, disappointed again. After the Ireland game, we were thinking maybe he's got that spark back. Maybe he just needed something from the new coach. He was good at line-out time, but everywhere else, again, lacklustre. Not putting in big hits like he was. Not disruptive at ruck time, counter-rucking like he was. Post-World Cup, pardon me, sorry. And I'm wondering now if we just go Teddy Williams, because Teddy Williams has made impacts off the bench every time, and if he doesn't go with Teddy, then it's literally because he wants the impact off the bench. Dav Jenkins was excellent in a losing effort. The tackling, again, I think he was the top tackler, and he just gets through a mountain. He's just the typical just niggly second row, which I love. Unfortunately, he was just in the first half, he was kind of on his own a lot of the time. Jack Morgan was excellent again, particularly that first half when it was a rear guard action. He was if we didn't keep him in, if he wasn't in the team, we would have been absolutely wrecked by half time, even though we kind of already were. He's superb. 25 tackles, 100% success rate. That's insane. He's into everything. Anything that's good about Wales, he's into. big hits. He was one of the few who put in big hits. He put 2 massive hits in Van der Merwe in the second half. It looked like, because Van der Merwe caused, in fairness, quite a bit of issues for the defence. And the second half, it looked like when he was getting the ball, Jack was just flying into him to put in a big shot on him. And it was just like, I'm just going to do it myself sort of thing. So, yeah, another excellent performance in a losing effort for the skipper. Tommy Raffel, it's been a really tough tournament for him. He's been pretty ineffective, in my opinion. I'm a massive Tommy Raffel fan, so I don't want people to think I'm down on him at all, but he's just, his biggest thing and his biggest point of difference is his work at the breakdown, and he does, sometimes slow it down, but he's been very ineffective at getting penalties and turnovers, which is what he's been so good at throughout his career. And just as it hasn't clicked, I don't know whether it's the balance of the 2-7s, whether they're going for the same ball, what it is, or how it's working, what the reason is, but it just doesn't seem like it's working, and I would be really tempted to go with Wainwright to start for the England game. Toby Faletau was magnificent. He had the try that was not, but his line-out was superb. Tackled, carried. He had that big run where he sort of swerved around a defender, sat down. Ben White, sorry, went from my brain then, and give us some go forward when no one else was, and got through just an absolute mountain of work, and we need to protect him at all costs. I absolutely love him, and I'll be devastated once he retires. Thomas Williams, I don't know whether there's going to be an unpopular opinion amongst Welsh fans, but I think he's playing himself out of the Lions. He was going into it, I think Gibson Park is obviously miles ahead of everyone when it comes to Lions selection, but I think Thomas Williams was really looking like, in my opinion, he was going to be on the bench for the test matches, all going well, given his club form. But it hasn't worked for Wales, and I know the team wasn't great today, so it's hard for him. He's way better when it's open and we're creating chances, but he just looks off the pace to me. I don't know what it is. Other people might disagree with me with this one, because I heard people say they thought he played well in the Ireland game, and I didn't think he was particularly good in that one either. So yeah, I think he's really playing himself out of Lions contention, and going into the Six Nations, I was saying he was one of the few nailed on for the Lions for Wales. So Anscombe, I wonder if that concussion that he passed the protocol, but he just didn't seem at the races today, didn't seem physically like he was that interested. Kicking wasn't great, although that one for Blair Murray was really good. And he was not playing flat to the line, he was playing deep and not really creating anything. He just looked it looked a bit uninterested, and I just wonder if his body is not holding up, and maybe we just put Evans in for the next game with someone who's probably got a lot more upside over the next couple of years. The two centres, Ben Thomas struggled in the first half defensively. He was okay, but I was actually really impressed with Max Llewellyn. I think that was one of his better games, considering how bad we were, particularly in that first half. In the back line, he was the pick of the players, especially defensively. He was flying around and flying into tackles, which is what we need. He's a big guy. We need him to use his physicality. He was coming onto the ball at pace, although they didn't really give him the ball that much. Didn't get many touches, Mr. Gatland. So yeah, I thought he was good though. I thought he was the pick of the backs. Unfortunately for Tony Rog, he went off really early, which probably caused some issues because he was going to be the one who had to marshal Duhan van der Merwe. I said in my preview that was going to be a good battle, and I was looking forward to seeing them test van der Merwe in the air. Didn't happen, unfortunately. Ellis Mee had to move over to that wing, and he had a bit of trouble with van der Merwe. The difficult second performance, and so it proved. It was, Van der Merwe's a world-class player. With his ball in hand, he's one of the best in the world. So, it's going to be a learning experience, but he did struggle with him, missed or slipped off him quite a lot, or was very passive defensively. So, you learn, he's young. And then Blair Murray was good. Aerially, not as good as he's been in the last two that he's played fullback, but counter-attacking, he always offers something, and he's very dangerous counter-attacking, and just whenever we get the ball in his hand, very just small but very strong, and it's super elusive, and his kicking was really good today. That extra left foot option that the coaches love, he was really good at doing that, helping taking pressure off the other two kickers. And then the substitutions, Kieran Azarati came on a couple of times for different things, and was okay. Sometimes he looked like he was walking when he maybe should have been running, but scrum time he was good, and I think won a couple of scrum penalties, so forgive him for that. Gareth Thomas come on with a bee in his bonnet, which I really was happy to see. He was flying into things. He did well at the scrum, which he got criticised for last week. When he came on, he was very ineffective, and this week he was really good, and he was flying himself into tackles, going low, getting those chops in that he's so good at. So he'll be happy with his impact off the bench, and he was superb. Teddy Williams had another big impact off the bench. Carries hard, got his try, picked a really good line out wide and run at some backs, and finished off with a really big stretch using his frame. That was a really good finish, and he's just good. He's just good when he comes on. When you just watch if you put his performance and his impacts on the games, I know it's different because he's coming on when players are more tired, the game loosened up and stuff, but his impact compared to what Will Rowlands had in the whole game is massive in my opinion. And like I said, the only reason I think he doesn't get picked in front of Will Rowlands in the next game is because they want his impact off the bench again. But I think he just deserves to get him in there. He's gonna be one of, if not the option going forward. So get him in there and get him some experience. Wainwright was impactful off the bench again. Big carries, busy, throws his weight around, exactly what we needed. And the balance looked a lot better when he was going 6 and Jack was at 7. We looked a lot more cohesive in the back row, and I think we weren't losing the breakdown as much, and just generally it was much better in my opinion. Rod Williams came on and was okay. Just tried to speed it up. Just he's a very nuts and bolts player, but does the job well. And he was alright. He didn't come on last week, and I think probably his display showed that he probably should have come on last week because he did sort of get things going a bit. Jared Evans was a real catalyst in attack. His kicking was a lot better than what Anscombe was doing, and just him taking the ball to the line, he brought the centres into it way more, brought the big ball carriers in and created space. He just loves the multiple pump passes as he's running at the line, and just defenders just don't know where to go. And once there's multiple players coming at the line and he's got his pick of picking his pass to who he wants, he's really good at executing that, and that's what Ben Thomas's try came from. There was multiple options going at the line, and Jared just picks the right one, and Ben goes through pretty much untouched. And then Joe Roberts, who came on the wing for Tom Rogers, was good in a position that is not really suited to him. Defensively, he was good. He made one excellent tackle towards the end where they went clean through. I can't remember who it was. A Scottish player goes clean through, and he's basically one-on-one, and he's gone around him, but Roberts has recovered and made a superb tackle to keep Wales in the game. And then late on, he had that opportunity where Azarati gives it to Williams on a turnover, and Rodri puts him in space, and he just backs himself, but then he doesn't die with the ball, comes in field and keeps the move going, beats a couple of defenders using his pace and using his footwork and stuff. So yeah, he's been good off the bench both weeks, I think, albeit going on the wing. So positive, getting some experience and stuff in him, because I do really rate him. But yeah, ultimately it was a really disappointing weekend for us as a Welsh supporters. The under-20s losing as well in a disappointing, somewhat lackluster performance with really bad discipline. So yeah, it's not really good. Now all we can do is put the players put it behind them now and just move on to England and just try and take the positives from the second half and the learnings from the first half as to why they ended up in such a big hole, and just write it off as just one of those halves that teams have, and go into the Millennium Stadium looking to beat the old enemy at home and end in this terrible run. Was it 16 games now? I don't know. I'm getting sick of it, to be honest. But let me know what you think, and I'll catch you on the next one.